My name is Mike North, and I live in Sylvan Township. I moved here in October of 1998, and just serendipitously, I happened to move in right next door to the Chippewa Agency site. And I did not know anything about it when I moved here, but I do love history, and I worked for the Minnesota DNR. And one day early on in my career here, I noticed a map up at work that showed the Chippewa Agency site on it, except that the map had it about a mile further east than what it actually is. And I got a little bit curious about it. Had a friend in Parks, Ron Miles, who is also a historian and archaeologist, and he put me in touch with some papers that were put together, the nomination for the National Historic Site registry by Doug Burke. And so that actually gave me the actual location of the Chippewa Agency site, about a quarter mile from where I live. And so I started walking through the MPL lands there and just finding sites on there, the agency site, the old Red River Ox Cart trails. Some of the best examples that remain in Minnesota are right there on the agency site.
Mike, could you tell us about the agency, what its importance was, and just real briefly, a description of what that is.
That's right. So the agency site is about 4 miles upstream from Crow Wing, and it was the site that the government set aside for distributing annuities to the Chippewa people. And so there was several buildings there. It's hard to tell how many are there, but you can go to the site and you can still see cellar holes, and you can find artifacts on the surface. You can find them in gopher mounds that are dug up, lots of pieces of pottery, round bullet hole or bullets, musket balls. Yep. Even cartridges too. So a wide variety of things. Lots of square nails. There's slag from an old blacksmith shop site there, and other artifacts, pieces of just all sorts of things. Pieces of lanterns, pieces of an old wood stove that actually has a date on it, 1856, manufactured in Albany, New York, so can actually date it. Somehow that thing made its way over to Camp Ripley, I understand, and is in the museum there. But also at low tide, or when the river is low, when they lower the reservoir, a lot of stuff can be seen in the river just below there. So there were canoe landings there where you can see trenches in the bank where people would march up and down the banks and stuff. And the ox cart trail went through there as well. There must have been a campsite just outside of the Chippewa Agency site, because I found lots of artifacts there just right on the surface, including a Canadian halfpenny from, I think, 1857 on it was the date of it. So just demonstrates the connection with the trade routes from Canada to St. Paul.
Do you know the year which it was founded roughly?
Somewhere around 1848.
Okay.
And it must have been in existence until about 1870 or so. So Hole in the Day apparently did raid it once in 1862. I understand part of it, or all of it, was burned down at one point in time. There's been a whole bunch of different people that have been the agents there. Some of them have got well-known names that play into the history, not just of this area, but northern Minnesota. One of the things that I find interest is the census from 1860 and 1870 mentions the Chippewa Agency. They have listings of people there. And I don't know if those were just people at the agency itself or if they were from a broader area, like the county. But one of the names that I found interesting in 1870 census was Frank Eastman, because that apparently has to be the child of Seth Eastman, who was there. And I've read the book by Mary Eastman about the life of the Dakotas, and in there's an introduction that talks about Seth Eastman's children, and virtually nothing is known about Frank other than he lived and was in the Navy for a while. But it looks like he was a civil engineer based on the census there for the Chippewa Agency site. because it has him listed as being about 35 years old, born in Minnesota. There can't be too many Eastmans born in Minnesota in 1835 that aren't related to Seth Eastman, that have the same first name as a known child of his. And later on, he was in Washington, D.C., and invented a railroad car for transporting trout around the countryside. So
Interesting.
I thought that was interesting too. Just a little connection you can make through the censuses that are published. And
There was a name on this 1870 census, which I've studied extensively as well. It's Tepekoke Chikawabi.
Okay.
I believe that's the correct pronunciation in Ojibwe. But he was one of the accused murderers of Ellen MacArthur.
okay,
And David MacArthur was just here as
Mhm.
a great-great nephew of Ellen MacArthur, who was murdered
yep.
at Crow Wing,
Yep.
or just outside of Crow Wing.
Well, William Warren's wife and brother were both there. Matilda was his wife. Truman was his brother. They were both there at the agency site. So a lot of other people with names from the area. Fairbankses. I just can't remember them all, but Aikens.
So we just dedicated a marker during the sesquicentennial 2 weeks ago that I helped design,
Mhm.
the bridge collapse marker.
Okay.
And so it was the mother-in-law of William Aiken and his widow were both on that train. And his widow survived, but his mother-in-law and her sister both perished. Because William Aiken, one of his 3 wives,
Interesting.
died in that. I put that connection together. It's on the marker, actually.
Okay, I was not familiar with that. I'll have
In
to check
4
it out.
years, there'll be a 150th anniversary of that. We're trying to track living descendants of those people that died
Okay.
or that were victims so that
Mhm.
we can bring them together for our memorial service.
Interesting. Yep.
So I'll keep you informed on that.
Okay. Yep. So there's other historic features there at the Chippewa Agency site too, besides just the agency site and the Red River Ox Cart trails. There are burial mounds on the site. There is a village site on the river there that dates back to, I think they put it from the period of 500 to 1300 AD. If you walk down there, occasionally you can find a little piece of pottery there. And it's absolutely a gorgeous site too, with giant red pines looking out over the reservoir and Camp Ripley on the other side, so it's just very scenic. And it's also the site where Hole in the Day was murdered too, so a lot of history there.
Do you know exactly where that site is at, Mike?
Not exactly, just approximate.
Doug and I both independently worked on that. When I found his notes last fall,
Okay.
his location independently verified my location.
Okay.
Interpretation from the newspaper articles.
Okay.
So just right by that knoll by the Fisherman's Bridge on the west side, the wagon or ox cart trail would have came around that knoll by the
Okay.
bridge there.
Yep,
After it
I
forded
believe
the
it.
river.
Yep. So it's close enough, right?
I didn't mean to deviate
No,
from
no.
the conversation and going into the crowing agency. We hadn't really talked about that, so I thought, well, I'm going to grab onto that as you're
Yep.
talking about it.
Yep. So there was a lot of history too here with the 1862 Uprising. We know that the Hole in the Day was interested in joining the Dakota Nation in the Uprising, and he sent for the Leech Lake Band to come down. And so a lot of people came down from Leech Lake. They followed the Leech Lake Road, and we have I've seen historical documents that say they camped out where the Otter Tail Road and the Leech Lake Road met, about 2 miles upstream from up from Crow Wing. And we have maps that put that spot there, and there's a nice little pond right there at that spot, so you can go out there and you can find that pond today, and you can know exactly, in theory, where they camped. And I just drove by the one spot in the township where I know the Leech Lake Road can still be seen. There's one small segment where it goes up a small little rise, and you can see depressions in there from that road. So
Can you mark that up on a map, that location of the camp in 1862? I have also studied that, but we use yours for the report. We'll want to add that site because we have not added that site yet.
okay,
So,
I will
thank
do
you.
that. Yep. And I'll put together the documentation too that I've seen on where it's at and the maps. Yep.
We're pretty close. Is there any other specific thing that Mike could talk to that would be?
I wanted to, since he brought the agency and his vast knowledge of the agency, I think that's a really good thing to focus on in your presentation. So
Okay.
if you're okay, if there's anything else you want to add, feel free, Mike. It's up to you.
Well, how about, is there anything as the plane is passing or whatever? Oh, both.
Both, yeah.
I have my headphones on. So, is there anything about the landscape review, the literature cultural asset review that Jeremy and the team are working on that you're specifically interested in? Or is there a question that you have that you hope will be illuminated, or a result from this survey that you're interested in seeing happen?
I want to see the a National Historic Landmark District designated along the Mississippi and Crow Wing rivers, because so much history happened here and it's still intact, and a lot of it is unstudied. You know, there's never really been a real detailed study of the Chippewa Agency site. So
You should
I-
talk about that with Jeremy.
Yep. I also would like to mention too, just
Sounds
for
like
the
a different
record,
grant.
that yep, that there are people that live along the Crow Wing River to the west of the agency site, and when they, I know one person in particular, when he puts in his garden every year, he always digs up artifacts, and he's got a nice little inkwell from that period of time, and gun pieces. So
Interesting.
there's a lot of stuff.
Who is that?
Wayne Malone, or Wayne, is it Malone or Maroney? Wayne Malone. Yep.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Nope.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So if you could put him in contact with Jeremy, that would be great.
I'm sure I could. He'd take you down and introduce you to him.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your time and for your stories. This was a great